Well, it's officially October, which means my birthday month is over. Because now we celebrate birthdays for a month, right? For an entire month. Which is a good thing because it is now, instead of Nick's birthday month, it is Reformation month. So we're going to celebrate the Reformation all month. We're grateful for the musical stuff that we're going to do, but we're also going to have a sermon series about reforming. As we celebrate the 501st anniversary of Martin Luther nailing the 95 Theses to the door at Wittenberg. But what's important before we start this is to understand the purpose of Reformation. The purpose of Reformation is not to change things just for the sake of changing them, right? The purpose of Reformation is to change things for the better. The purpose of Reformation is to improve things. And so we're going to talk about improving the things around us and improving ourselves for this month. The last Sunday of the month, 3 weeks from today, will be Reformation Day. We will celebrate, we'll talk about reforming the church. 2 weeks from today, we'll talk about reforming ourselves. And a week from today, we'll talk about reforming our relationships with others. But today, we're going to talk about reforming our society. Reforming our society, improving the way that we live together. And I think to have that conversation, we need to start with improving our politics. We're going to talk about politics for a couple minutes. And before you get too uncomfortable, maybe you already are, that's all right. Realize that in over 8 years of standing here and proclaiming this message on a weekly basis, I don't think I've ever told anyone how to vote, and I'm not going to do that today, and I'm not going to tell anybody what to believe politically. That's not my place. I don't believe it is. I don't believe it's the place of the church. But I still think it's important to talk about it because I heard somewhere yesterday that as a nation, we are more divided than we've ever been. That was someone's opinion. But we are divided, and it's ugly. Our current political makeup and conversations, they're ugly. And people say things about each other that it's just profoundly sad. And so I think we do need to talk about it because I think we're kind of in that place that Paul is writing to in 1 Corinthians when he starts off with saying, why are you all quarreling? Why are you all arguing? The church had divided into groups. And there was the Paul group and the Apollos group and the Peter group. And Paul's like, I don't understand. How is it that you are so divided? Why aren't you united in Christ? It's amazing to me that people are even saying, well, I was baptized by, to which I love how Paul says, I'm glad I didn't baptize any of you, except for 2 of you. That way, you can't say that you belong to me. The conflict is real, and conflict can do things to our society that is ugly. And so let's talk about that today. As I've said before, my political position is I am a flaming moderate. I prefer to stand in the middle. I don't consider myself part of either group on the left or the right. And there's been times in the past where I've heard someone on the far left say something and think to myself, wow, as I get older, I'm becoming more conservative. And then I'll hear something from somebody on the far right, and I'll say to myself, wow, as I get older, I'm becoming more liberal. But recently I've had a realization. Something has become crystal clear to me. When someone says something that I disagree with, I don't necessarily become more like their opponent. I just disagree with what they say. I don't become or join their opponent. In those moments, like Paul, I am grateful I didn't baptize you. In those moments, I am grateful that that person does not represent me, that person does not represent what I stand for. Because their agenda is not God's agenda. The agenda of our political parties is not God's agenda. Now, here's the moment of realization for me that made everything really clear, that really helped me with this point. Our political party's agenda is not God's agenda, and it shouldn't be God's agenda. Our political parties have a purpose. And it's not to be a Christian denomination, right? It is to rule. It is to legislate. And so, our political parties are not guilty of a Christian denomination doing something opposed to God's agenda. Instead, they are doing what they're supposed to do. Now, are they doing it the best way possible? No. No. And that's where our politics need to improve. And before I talk to how I think that can happen, I want to point to today's gospel. I want to point to today's gospel where Jesus is approached by Pharisees and Herodians. Back then, in first century Jerusalem and first century Israel, there was really two major political parties. You were pro-Roman or you were anti-Roman. And it might surprise you to find out that the people who were pro-Roman were the ones that the Romans put in charge, the leaders. They liked the Romans because the Romans put them in charge. And then there were the people who were against the Romans, and the majority of those people were just the average people. And so this question then to Jesus, should we pay the tax to Caesar or not, is meant to make enemies for Jesus. No matter how you answer this question, you're going to make enemies. If you say pay taxes to Caesar, the people aren't going to like you. And if you say don't pay taxes to Caesar, the leaders and the Romans aren't going to like you. And so they're trying to find enemies for Jesus. But Jesus can see their plan. He can see through their question, and he answers in a way that they weren't expecting. Give to Caesar what is Caesar's and give to God what is God's. Give to Caesar, which means be part of the society that you live in. Be a part of it. Do the things that are a part of the society. If pay taxes are part of your society, pay taxes. But give to God what is God's. Give to God what is God's. And what is God's is everything else. Everything else. The life that you live, the people you share it with, the gifts that you have, all the things in your life that make life worth living are the things that God has given you. And give that back to God. Make God number one in your life. Put God first. Jesus was more interested in serving God and living out God's will than earthly politics. And you could say that Jesus was crucified because the people he encountered were more interested in earthly politics, because Jesus was a threat to their power, and they were more interested in earthly politics than they were in God's will and in God's plan for the world. People do dangerous things when you threaten their power. They do scary things. I think the key to reforming our society, to improving the way that we live together, is in the question that Jesus was asked. I'm going to paraphrase this. Teacher, we know that you are impartial. We know that you don't pick a side. We know that you're impartial, and teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. Teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. Our parties don't need to be denominations. And there's nothing wrong with being a part of a political party. I know good people who are Democrats, and I know good people who are Republicans. And I'm sure 2,000 years ago, there were good people who were pro-Roman, and there were good people who were anti-Roman. But if we really, 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 really want to improve our society, our allegiance to Jesus must come first. Our allegiance to God's agenda must come first. Our trust must be put in God above everything else. And when we are asked if we are pro this or pro that, we should respond like God would respond. And the Bible is pretty clear about what God is for. So we should respond, I am pro-compassion. I am pro-generosity. I am pro-honesty. I am pro-kindness. I am pro-faithfulness. I am pro-integrity. I am pro-forgiveness. I am pro-goodness. I am pro-peace. I am pro-joy. I am pro-love. I am pro-God. Our hope for humanity and the future of humanity is and always will be in God's hands, and it will happen according to God's plan. Our hope for an improved, reformed society is in good people doing good things. And as Christians, we have an opportunity to be leaders in our society. We have an opportunity and a responsibility. And we can do that by always putting God first, no matter what. Amen.